Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Thursday, April the 18th, and welcome to our video commentary. You may have heard in the news that but John Bolton, who's the National Security Advisor of President Trump, was down in Miami, and he announced that tougher policies against Cuba with respect to stolen property. For those of you who may not be familiar with the story, I'll just give you a little history lesson. Right after the communists took over Cuba in the early 60s, a lot of private property was expropriated and confiscated, Cuban property, but then they went after American companies. Some of those companies included like the electric company, the telephone company, hotels, but there were also a lot of American companies down in Cuba, small, medium-sized manufacturing companies, some of it related to tobacco, some of it related to sugar. And these companies all of a sudden found themselves confiscated by the Cuban government. And the owners of these companies were never properly compensated for the expropriation. And, you know, they were forced to leave Cuba and leave everything behind. Over time, the embargo was created to fight that. And then in the 1960s, what was known as the Helms-Burton Law went into effect to tighten the screws on Cuba with respect to these properties. Well, the Trump administration is now going to make it a lot easier for Americans who had their property stolen in Cuba to file in court. And the way it works is this way. For example, if a person goes to Cuba and they buy a hotel that had been confiscated, let's say, or a piece of property that had been confiscated by the Cuban government, that person can now be sued in an American court for trafficking in stolen property. So it's a huge disincentive for a foreign company to go to Cuba because you don't know what lawsuit you're going to find in an American court, somebody saying, hey, you're dealing with my property, you got to compensate me. And in fact, right now, there are 6,000 such lawsuits in American courts waiting to be heard and waiting to be dealt with. Of course, the reason that the Trump administration did this is to get tougher on Cuba with respect to Venezuela and to, in essence, try to get Cuba out of Venezuela. Cuba is in many ways the country most helping Venezuela at the moment and the Maduro administration. But overall, I think it was a good move by President Trump because it'll make it easier for people who had their property stolen to at least get compensation in the international courts and force Cuba to pay compensation for these properties that were stolen many years ago. It's a good move by President Trump, and another reason why I'm sure he's going to win the state of Florida the next time around. Thank you for watching. We have all of these on YouTube and Twitter and on my blog. And if today is your birthday, happy birthday. Bye-bye, everybody.